Hey, what's going on? My name is Shay, and this is Forge Dental, where we talk about mouth stuff and listen to lo-fi hip-hop beats. In this week's video, we're going to continue with part 2 about how to use BS, business strategy, to formulate your personal statement and your overall strategy for applying to dental school. In part 1, I read my personal statement and explained why I included what and where. In this part 2, we're going to look at one of the frameworks I used to develop my competitive advantage that I used to apply to dental school and also formulate my overall personal statement. But first, do me a huge favor and hit that subscribe button because I got a lot more BS coming your way in the next couple of weeks. Anyway, your competitive advantage is your thing or things that you use to outperform your competition. In this case, how can you outperform your students? And when I'm talking about performance, I'm not just talking about grades and test scores. As you'll see a little bit later on, performance can be a lot of things. So, to define your competitive advantage, we're going to look at something called Porter's generic strategies, or Porter's framework, which is something that a guy named Porter created a couple decades ago when he was working at Boston Consulting Group. I learned about this when I got my MBA a couple years before I decided to apply to dental school. And it can get a little bit boring, but I'm going to try and make it as quick and painless as possible before showing how it can apply to your personal statement. Porter's framework tries to give a definition for an organization's generic competitive advantage by looking at an organization's strength in the columns in terms of cost and differentiation, and the scope of the market that that organization targets in the rows in terms of broad or narrow. So thinking of a company like Kia, which tries to deliver products at a low cost, or a company like Tesla, which tries to differentiate itself through its technology. For its market, does an organization target as many people as possible, like Toyota, or target a very niche and specific audience like Bugatti? Where that row and column intersects gives that organization's competitive advantage. So an organization that tries to keep costs low and appeal to a large audience, like Walmart, would follow a cost leadership advantage. Conversely, an organization like Target, which is still low cost, but really is focusing on differentiating itself from other big box retailers in terms of branding, while still applying to that broad audience, would have a differentiation leadership competitive advantage. Whew, okay, sorry if that did or did not make sense. I hope it did, because we're going to switch it up a little bit and show how it can apply specifically to dental school. For our dental school application competitive advantage framework, we're going to just tweak Porter's framework a little bit. We're keeping differentiation, and we're going to keep the broad and narrow scopes. We're just going to change the cost focus to statistics. So now our columns are statistics, which means how good your grades are and what your test scores are, and differentiation, or your work experience, volunteering, research, stuff like that. And our scope is going to look at whether you are applying to a broad number or diverse range of schools, or a narrow range of schools that have something specific, like are in-state or schools with unique requirements. So I like this framework because it looks at things beyond just GPA and DAT score. Yes, if you have a 3.8 GPA and a 26 DAT score, that should be your competitive advantage that you can use to get into dental school. But if you don't, I like this framework because it shows that there's other avenues that you can look at that can help you be competitive against people with better grades than you, or I don't know, different experiences than you. Maybe you have a 3.3 GPA and you got a 19 on the DAT. That's fine. You can show your competitive advantage using exceptional research experience or thousands and thousands of volunteering hours. And this framework allows us to capture that. Let's look back at our chart. So if you're a student with a near perfect score on the DAT and you have amazing grades and you don't really care where you go to dental school, then cool. Your competitive advantage is exceptional statistics, because your statistics should get you in pretty much wherever you apply to within reason. If you're looking at schools with specific academic requirements like calculus or ceramics, then your competitive advantage is focused academics. If you're just an okay student, then look at being exceptional at something besides grades. Publishing research, developing a new volunteering organization at your school, being a professional dancer, or something else. then your competitive advantage is exceptional differentiation because it's something exceptionally unique. Finally, if you're applying to a school that really emphasizes research or needs, a specific letter of recommendation from a religious leader or only accepts in-state students, then your competitive advantage is focused differentiation. So if you look at my stats video, which I'll link here, you'll know my grades were only so-so. So I had to really lean into my work experience and unique background. You also know I was focused on applying to only my in-state school. So my competitive advantage was focused differentiation. So I hope that made sense. What's your competitive advantage? If you feel comfortable, leave it in the comments below. I really like this framework because I think it gives a lot of hope to students. I've met a lot of really cool pre-dental students who maybe don't have the greatest grades and are freaking out, but I think this allows them to look at their strengths and help frame them in a different context that they can really exploit in their applications and personal statements. So if you have any questions, leave them in the comments below. I've got my social media down there. I've also linked a couple resources that explore Porter's generic strategies and a little toolkit I put together about writing your personal statement. Thanks for hanging out. I'll see you next week where we'll go into part 3 of using BS to apply to dental school, where we'll look at transforming your competitive advantage to defining your why that you want to be a dentist. See ya.